Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. You are listening to Game Club from Wannabe Critic Productions. I am your host, Gabriel Fast, as per usual, and today we are talking about the 2019 game from 505 Games, Remedy and 505 Games, Control, finally. And I am here with none other than Ryan Dalton. What's funny is that we recorded our first episode ever together, like our first ever episode podcasting, which was Alan Wake. Now we know these universes, if you're a fan of Control, it's these universes are connected. But I have not posted that episode yet because we were waiting to finish, for both of us to finish Control. And so now 2.5 years later, 2 years later, here we are now. So, Ryan, how you feeling now, man?
Hey, good, thanks. Yeah, life is funny how we're like, hey, we should do this. And then 2.5 years later, we finished the project.
Yeah,
and then there's probably still a third one we'll do down the road a little bit later. But
yeah, for sure. Because, there's definitely, there's going to be more to the story, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about it. But it's worth mentioning now, of course, you've become basically a full-time wannabe with us. We were looking for a fourth and you had joined on. You came up with the name for our movie review show, Keeping It Real, which you can find over on the Wannabe Collective, which should be in the description down below. But that's with 2 E's, REEL, like movie reel. That's, I'm glad we have an identity now, thanks to you, Ryan. So
I have a weird love for and little talent for naming things. Like shows and other things. It's just they just pop out of me.
Yeah,
I have the hardest time naming my own books, ironically, but I can name other things.
I was just gonna say, I was like, yeah, you are an author, so that's kind of your wheelhouse to come up with stuff creative. But anyways, no, I'm glad we're here recording this. I'm glad we're talking about this game finally because there's, in a way, I don't mean to start the show off with a negative, but this game, there's almost too much in the type of environment that is inside this game.
It's incredibly dense.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted, and you really have to care. You really have to care about the game you're playing to see how it kind of plays into the bigger picture of what's actually happening, and kind of seeing the implications from Alan Wake. Because like we said before, Alan Wake and this game are connected, which we will get into. But it took me a while to get into this game. I got to the same. Well, first off, I had bought the game. I was like, God, this game's gorgeous. It's fun to play. Whatever. And there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about. Kind of the pros of this game, as well as a couple of criticisms from me. I'm sure you have some criticisms as well, but I feel like for the most part, we're going to be praising this game for the next hour or whatever, however long it takes to review this. So
yeah, mostly praise. Yeah, some nitpicks, but mostly a lot of praise. Well, yeah, I wasn't very far into the game when I stopped and was like, why aren't people talking about this game? It is awesome.
Yeah, I think we even said, this game is pretty underrated. It obviously sold well and did well, though, because it does have a pretty good following. Whenever Alan Wake Remastered came out, there was quite a bit of love for that, as people were kind of rekindling that joy. It's obvious that they're going somewhere with this franchise and with this story. It's a really cool story, honestly. Yeah, I was gonna say, I was wondering if you're gonna put your.
I don't know why I didn't do that. I've got my Bureau of Control background now. So
there you go.
Yeah, now we've got the vibe going.
Yeah, well, it's a vibe. So I wanted to play a little game. I want you to give me your best summation of the plot of this game, and then we're gonna read what's on Wikipedia and see how well it stacks up.
Oh wow! Okay. Ooh, pop quiz. Okay. 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 So
right?
You walk into a building, and the building is essentially a gateway to the weirdest things you can imagine, as far as we're talking dimensional shifting, we're talking like discovering the explanations behind old legends and mythology. And yeah, so much of it seems to centralize in this building, which seems almost to be alive in itself.
Yes.
But it's also in crisis, and somehow you walk in and the place already knows you, and almost like it's in a dream, you are just part of it as soon as you walk through the door, and like an essential part of it. And part of the game is to figure out what is happening, and it's almost like part of the game is to figure out what's happening in the game and to unravel, okay, what's the core behind this, what's the actual problem, and where do I fit in and how do I fix it. But at the same time, it's very clear that you are using crazy things that you half understand to fix a thing that is only one cog in a grand cosmic wheel. And yeah, okay, yeah,
That's a good. No, that's great. That's a good overview because it matches this pretty well. You know, I'm gonna fill in the gaps for you. It says in October 2019, Jesse Faden arrives at the oldest house following a telepathic message from Polaris, which is this voice inside her head, seeking the whereabouts of her kidnapped brother Dylan. Inside the building, Jesse discovers the lifeless body of Zachariah Trench and is instructed by Polaris, aka the voice inside her head, to pick up his fallen service weapon. Jesse is translocated to the astral plane where the board immediately appoints her as the new director of the Federal Bureau of Control in Trench's stead. Exiting Trench's office, Jesse is attacked by Federal Bureau of Control agents possessed by an entity that Jesse dubs the Hiss. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. You walk in this building, and there very much is a sense of, like, what is happening? Like,
yeah, there's an unreality to it that is absolutely, like it just sucks you in. And, it's one of those games, you talked about how it's like, you got to care about this game, and
yes,
and you really do, because it's like there are games you could log on and play for an hour and have a great time, but there are games that you really need to like revel in and let yourself soak in the atmosphere and like have longer sessions each time you play. And this is one of those, because the atmosphere has half of the experience of playing the game.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and we can kind of go into that. The gameplay aspect. We'll go first with that. Like. I want to tackle the pros and cons of both. Let's start with the good things. Like, first of all, the weapon you get immediately, the service weapon, the gun, right? I did not know that there was multiple versions of the gun, literally until... So, literally, I didn't realize there was, like, a charge version or, like, a machine gun version.
Some of those upgrades would save your life.
Oh, my God. I was, like, using just, like, the base gun for a long time. I just kept upgrading that thing. And, there are... If you're not playing this game actively, it can be hard to go back to and navigate, kind of your gear and like kind of see like, oh yeah, this piece levels up this thing and I have to do this thing to do this thing. And you really need to like, kind of like Ryan said, soak in and revel in your experience with the game as you continue to play.
Because everything has a story. Like, I'm not going to give away what it is, but that service weapon, the game reveals at a certain point, has a very storied history in various forms. And so that's cool. And then other abilities that you would get, you don't get them in the necessarily traditional way. Like there's one of your key powers, like this telekinetic ability, you literally get from an old floppy disk.
Yeah.
And so it comes at things sideways in a lot of ways, and but just in a way that I find very engaging. You gotta really give it a chance to pull you in. Yeah,
and I mean you used the word decentralized. This is every bit of that. Decentralized and very non-traditional. It reminds me very much, a lot of your story of this game. Yes, you can get a cohesive story out of what you're playing, and there's going to be, no matter how much you've soaked in about this game, you're going to need to watch some videos and do more research after you've finished it, because the ambiguity and the ambitiousness of the project by the end of the game, you don't really have a full sense of what is actually going on there. You will probably, unless you do extensive research and continued, digging, it's very hard to get the entire story of what is actually happening and what's actually going on. And I like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because they do a good job of conveying that this is just part of a very grand story, and not even just one story. There are overlapping stories and dimensions and things out there. And this is just one piece of it. And then it's probably the only game that I actually looked forward to getting ancillary material in the game. Like, you stumble upon voice recordings, you stumble upon just files.
Files upon files upon files. Like,
it's probably it's one of the few games that I read and listened to the vast majority of those things. A lot of games, to me, it ended up not being rewarding enough to spend the time to do it. Yeah. This, to me, those really kind of rewarded you, because you either got some sort of deeper knowledge, or you learned some aspect of something you already had or were doing, or it just fleshed out the world in an interesting. Everything was still interesting, and so I thought that was an accomplishment too, making all of that background material still something that you actually wanted to spend the time with.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a burp lodged. It's like I get a little burpy when I drink my seltzer water, you know. There it goes. Yeah, no. And I like, you know, they one thing that wasn't lost on me, and I'm sure it wasn't lost on you, was just the use of imagery and how practical it was. Like, okay, you're in this giant building, like office building, and you keep coming across files. It's like, holy crap, I keep coming across all these files. And there's even a section of the game where you have to assume the role of like an office worker, and they really lean into that kind of that modern like 9 to 5 kind of zombie-esque place that a lot of people find themselves in, like just hating their job, but just they got to do it, you know, like going to these dead, you know, you get what I'm saying, like the corporate ladder, you know, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and just how much of a soul crushing grind it is. And like,
yeah, and like the unnaturalness of that, and
yes,
they really play that up. And,
yes,
and there's a sense of wrongness that they cultivate. Yes. I have described it. I think I described it to you this way, and to some other people, trying to describe the mood of the game. There's a scene in the first Matrix where Neo is getting yelled at by his boss for being late, and the colors are weird. There's that weird guy cleaning the window. You can see on Thomas Anderson's face that he's like, everything going on right now is wrong on a very fundamental level. And that's the feeling of the game amplified.
Yeah, and I mean,
there's a wrongness to it that you're like, something is not right here, but at the same time, it's irresistible though.
Yes, and it is familiar. Like, you've never done this before, but yet it feels familiar. And a good way that they kind of contrast that feeling, and I like how they kind of play into that. I guess it's a metaphor, you know, for, again, like, you see all these people in this giant building, and it seems like this is a never-ending, you know, there's no way to soak in everything that's happening, or there's no way to really accomplish anything in this building, is almost what it feels like. You still, even after you beat the game, it's like, oh man, like I barely got anything done today type thing. You know, that's that type of feeling. And like I love that feeling, and it feels unnatural. But a good way they contrast that, and I like how you make the comparison to the Matrix, is, you know, the NPCs that are helping you, or that you're helping along the way, this is common to them. This is their real life. This is their real world. This is where they reside. This is where they thrive. And they just warmly welcome you and accept you as the new director. Like, whenever they see you, it's like, oh, you're the new director. Okay, it's not uncommon for them to see maybe someone else, you know, doing this thing. And yeah, like I loved that aspect of it. Now, I will say, you know, this is going to be kind of a compliment sandwich with a con in there. I don't feel like this game's for casual gamers.
There are points where I think they go a little too far in being mysterious. It's very ambiguous. Like, yeah,
there
are plenty of points where I love it. I'll tell you a simple one where I feel like I wish it had been more helpful. The map.
Yes.
The game map is inscrutable.
It's horrible.
And I would have... I don't know if it was by design or what, but because there are so many levels to the oldest house, and so many, because it's so vast, because it's not, not rooted in reality once you walk through.
Yeah.
Then I think you needed a map that was going to help you more. The map does not help you at all. And I would have enjoyed spending less time retracing my steps to find the one door like to get to these other places that I'm supposed to go. That was one of the few. There are only two things in the game that like would genuinely frustrate me at times, and that was one of them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And also, like, they set it up perfectly for this to have like a Metroid style map, you know, where literally you have your mini map in the corner and, you know, show me my objective, show me the things, you know, and each time I go to a new level or a new floor, change that map, change that mini map, you know, that way it's easily accessible. Don't, you know, the one way they tried to distinguish it is like you kind of say like, okay, each floor that was lower or higher like progressively got darker or lighter, you know, depending on where you're at. It's like, okay, I need to go down a level or whatever, but still it shouldn't be that complicated.
I've seen games use that kind of map where it's like using the like the fade in or whatever to indicate the levels. I've seen other games do that much better.
Yeah, no,
where
totally.
you could where you could actually follow it. So yeah, that part I wasn't crazy about. Or if they wanted to preserve more of the mystery, just keep everything that you haven't discovered in fog. Don't show it to us. Instead, a lot of what the map does is it'll show you an area, but it'll just have question marks on it because you don't know what it is or how to get there. And that I thought was kind of frustrating.
Yeah, and again,
just the map in general.
Kind of playing into like that corporate like building / like my one thing I was thinking is like, God, this reminds me of being in a hospital. Like you never know where the hell you are in a hospital half the time. It's like, where do we go?
Yeah.
Like,
and
you
it
know,
twists back on itself.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, I was just here, you know. And I think about like whenever you go to deal with like the poop monster, you know, at like towards the beginning of the game, like those doors are instrumental to the game, you know, progressing the game. Those doors, like trying to go to those different areas, but you can very easily miss it because there's not a giant sign or a waypoint marker or anything. Like you literally have to look for the signs on the doors to say like, okay, you know, I find myself squinting, looking at signs and being like, that's where I got to go, you know? And again, like if that was intentional to the game's design, because that's literally how it feels traversing and building like that in real life, kudos to them because that's how it made me feel. You know, it was that sense, sense of familiarity.
Feel lost.
Yes, exactly. Like that sense of familiarity, but also being like, I hope this is the right way to go, you know, and things like that. But again, like even with the lore, right? I have so many files I need to listen to and so many files I need to read and so many things I have to go through. And one thing that was kind of frustrating is you'd find a file and there'd be a bunch of like redacted things or like black marks through stuff, and it's like, well, I can't decipher this, you know. I don't, you know. It'd be like if you happen to come across the other file, if you've been exploring, you might have that, you know, the other piece you needed, or the other two pieces you needed, or whatever. Did I freeze?
No, you're fine. Did I?
Oh, I'm good. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was like, did I freeze?
I can hear you. Yeah.
But
I think with those files,
that is a big thing for me.
You had to make. Yeah, I think with those files, you just had to make peace with the fact that those were always going to be more mysterious than, like, they were always going to show more mystery than actually give information.
Yeah.
I think some of those files, you know, they were meant to kind of build out to let you know even more like what kind of universe you were in.
Yeah.
And that the actual answers to those wasn't as important. So it's kind of building atmosphere.
Yeah, totally. Like they're like almost kind of like stop trying to make sense of it and just worry about trying to like navigate what you're doing right now type thing. And
it's the whole dream, like the dream state thing.
Totally.
It really, like from minute one when you start the game, it basically kind of, without saying it, it tells you, look, just go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
This is an unreality that you have to treat it like a dream, and that whatever's happening, you just have to accept that it's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And don't ask too many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. So we kind of talked about, you know, like traversal and kind of going through the world, navigating the lore, trying to decipher that. Let's talk about combat just for a second. And we will kind of circle back to that subject again here, towards the end of the show, just about the implications of the world and kind of how it ties into Alan Wake and stuff like that. But I want to get to the meat and potatoes of this particular game. So the gunplay. So I love third-person shooters. Third-person experiences are some of my favorite games to play. Like, I'm a huge PlayStation fan. You know, that's kind of PlayStation's MO, is doing that thing. If I wouldn't have known better, I would have said, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense that this would be a PlayStation game if it was. The combat has a flow to it. It's not particularly challenging, although there were some boss fights that were challenging. The regular combat wasn't. I don't know how to put this. It was more of a thing of you could get as intricate or as crafty as you wanted to, but at the end of the day, you could also just literally finish the game just with the first pistol, the first pistol form, and do it that way. Obviously, getting the ability to switch between them. I think I ended up getting my two. I only had two forms to finish the game. I had like the bazooka one, where the charge, I think it was, where it was like would charge up 3 and then shoot 3 grenades or whatever. I ended up using that one, and then the one that was like a rail gun, basically. Those were like the two that I used at the end of the game. And I was like, yeah, this is freaking awesome, but it did the adventure game thing like super duper well. I don't know that I've ever played a game that had combat quite like this. I mean, what's your take?
No, yeah, it was interesting because there's so much more to the game than just the weapon you're carrying. And there's these other abilities. I used the telekinetic abilities, I would say, more than I used the gun.
That's what, yeah, same. I led with that as much. Like, I took down the shields as much health as I could, and then whatever I needed to, to finish them off, that's what I would do once I ran out of energy.
Partly because, I mean, yeah, they just made it so fun. And it's so cool, like the sound it would make, and like how you, and how you could you could kind of charge one up before throwing a table at a bad guy.
Yeah.
And, I love how, like, if you can see it, you could probably grab it and throw it. Like the levels were very interactive that way, like and impressively destructible.
If you didn't have anything, like literally, it's like I need something. It would just grab like a piece of concrete up there, out of the thing. And if you came back to the same place,
out of the ground.
Yeah, you came back to the same place later. It's like, oh yeah, that's where I took that chunk of the ground out. Like.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, you could, if you wanted to like treat it like a a gunplay game, you could. But yeah, it definitely accommodated different styles. I used, just the regular pistol quite a bit, from the gun, but the bazooka one definitely came in handy.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely, I think because there's so much else going on in the game, they were free to make the combat just something different because there's so much more in the game that can be satisfying. That didn't have to be the end all be all, so they could also make that a little bit different.
Yeah.
I found it thoroughly enjoyable. The only thing I would criticize is I would say and it was not often, which is good, but you're right that the difficulty was not that high. It was a comfortable, challenging level.
Yeah.
But there were 2 or 3 battles that got like 10 times as hard without warning.
Yeah. True.
And I found that really frustrating because I thought, okay, I understand, boss fights and things they're supposed to be harder. They're supposed to be challenging. You probably shouldn't get through it the first time.
Right.
But there were 2 or 3 of them that I thought, this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, I'm not an inexperienced gamer, and this should not be that hard, especially when the rest of the game is a certain level. But for the most part, it was great. Yeah.
There were the newer enemies that were like frozen. They were like cold. They kind of looked like clickers. They gave me a hard time. And I was like, God, why is this so free? And it would put me back to where I had to go through a wave of guys before I could get to them. So that was like the only time where I was like, this is pissing me off, And I get, adding new elements and stuff. What I did appreciate how, kind of the the phantom looking guys that were like upside down, like they would charge at you, and if they got close enough to you, they would explode and stuff.
Yeah.
Like those guys scared me. But having kind of like the grunt guys, along with the shield guys, along with the floating guys, like there were some guys like in wheelchairs that were floating at different times, and I was like, that's weird. There were a lot of different things and a lot of different challenge presented. It wasn't necessarily challenge. It was just there was a particular order you knew you should tackle these objectives in.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I really liked. Knowing it's like, okay, I got to take out the phantom guys first, or the floating wheelchair guy. The tank guy with the shield, of course, he's going to give me trouble, but as long as I keep my distance, you're actively thinking and problem solving the best way to go about these things and do these things. And also being like, oh crap, I'm going to die, knowing that there's grunts around that you can like take those guys out and pick up life. And it's like, okay, now what? Just in those combat sequences, you kind of have to keep your head on a swivel because it could be super like easy, or it could just be the complete opposite and be like, okay, there's like 40 or 50 different things happening all at once. And then there would be times where you'd be like, oh, that was hard. And then the boss drops in after you've taken out the first wave of guys, and he brings another wave of guys. And I was like, oh, God. And you just, like, are running around, like, holding R1, like, running around, like, with your gun and, like, something. It's like, I need to find an opening, and, like, doing that is just... The combat's fun. It's super unique, and it gives a lot of freedom and freedom for style, as to what you want to do.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel... Even though I would say it's not a combat game, it's a game of, it's kind of a mind-bendy, twisting intrigue game that happens to have combat in it. But they managed to make the combat feel like it fits in that game world.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very impressive, because it didn't just turn into a shooter.
Yeah.
When the combat started, you really still felt like you were in the same place, same situation, same mood and everything. There was a very that feel of like something's really off here in all the fights too. Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I think we covered most of what I wanted to talk about with the combat. There's a lot of variables involved with that. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit to just the overall aesthetic of the game and even the enemies. What was like your favorite like enemy encounter, do you think?
Boy, I'm having to think back now. I mean, the floaty guys, yeah, were cool. The ones that were like the flying tanks, that you really had to, yeah, because they were always very creepy.
Yeah.
And they always
like shrieking at you, like whenever they're coming at you. It's like, oh, I'm like frick, like trying to like shoot them before they get to me, type thing.
For the ones that like felt like they really lived in that world, those were cool. I liked just the red orbs that were trying to take you out. These just faceless spheres.
Yeah, they're like constantly like like pulsating, like that's kind of. Oh, I'm sorry, you were talking about like the shield, the ones that would like kind of go from place to place.
Yes,
and like
they would
shield.
teleport.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just you see that and it's like, well, of course that would be the kind of thing you'd have to fight here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just so happens it's giving shields to everybody else. It's like, okay, so I have to focus on you first, type thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say those are the two that are coming to mind as the ones that, and those were both fairly common. They weren't in the game that special, but I just liked that they existed in the game and were contributed like in an organic way to just the whole vibe.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think my favorite encounters were probably like the black like shapes like that would like pulse and stuff and like chase you and like would kill you if you got too close to them for too long.
Yeah.
Like having to like lock it out, and be like, what do I have to do here? They're just no explanation really as to what they are. You just know they're bad. They're from something else. Somewhere else that there's you can't kill it. That's always like the scariest enemy is the one that you can't kill. And they weren't in the game too much to where it was like, oh my god, another one of these freaking guys. Like,
yeah, exactly. The balance was good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think those are my favorite encounters, but I really liked the sequences of whenever you would get a new ability and have to go to the astral plane, and like you'd have to like make your way through it, and then at the end of the game, like you're in an astral plane, but it's red now.
It's real, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like red, and everything is happening all at once. It was like, holy crap! I think that's never hit me how underrated this game is. Just the level of detail that was happening all at once. That sequence, and then whenever the Old Gods of Asgard song was playing, as you were, I think the song was called like "Take Control" or just "Control" or something.
That song was awesome.
It was awesome, and like. Just for me, I'm how much of like an Alan Wake fan I am. It kind of hit me. I was like, wait a minute, because I had just gotten some bits of Alan Wake lore from the game. I was like, is this the freaking band from the first game? And then sure enough, like I go to check my music and the collectibles because you kept that tape, and I loved that sequence and aesthetic of trying to navigate the infinite maze or whatever it was.
Yeah, the ever shifting maze, and that was one of the times that I thought, okay, they did a lot of setup for this to feel as crazy as it is, because I think the aesthetic of the whole, when you're in the office building parts of the building, because of how like painfully mundane those parts are in like that wrong kind of way. That just serves to underscore even more when you get into the crazy levels.
Yeah.
Like that, where everything is shifting and like you can't count on anything to be real, and everything. And I loved how like one of those really set you up for the other one to twist you around.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like I think just the level of talent for the development team, you know, to create something like that where, you know, everything was winding and just changing, you know, constantly, like in that level whenever you're fighting those guys and like you're always having to look for the new opening and all that other stuff. It was just, it really kept you guessing and kept you on your toes. It's like, okay, I have to be careful here because like I'm not indestructible, you know, and I will have to redo this. And I died once in that area. But I remember being like, after that sequence was over, I remember being like, frick, I wish that I could just go play that part again. You know, like,
it's funny. I had the exact same thought. I thought, yeah, I wish I could reload and just do that all over again because it was so much fun.
It just made you feel awesome. Like you could tell that it kind of, I don't know if you played Red Dead 2, but there's a point in Red Dead 2 where you realize like your journey is coming to a like decrescendo. Like you realize your journey is coming to an end. And that's how I felt with that game. Like that was like peak enjoyment for the game for me, where I was like, oh man, this is dope. Like I'm gonna save my brother. Like this is gonna be awesome. And then you know what? You only got about an hour or so left of the game after that, and it was like, oh, like that's the moment in the game that I go back to. I'm like, that was freaking awesome. Aesthetically, it made me feel like I was actually a part of immersive. I think is the best word. It was just a very immersive moment, and I think the game almost tries in so many ways to not make you feel immersed by kind of giving you the runaround a little bit, like with all the different corridors and stuff and just trying to traverse the map and stuff, that in that moment you really kind of felt like it was all kind of coming full circle at that point. And, you know, you kind of feel like you might have a bit more of a grip on the world than you did before. And I love the janitor, Artie, right? Like he's literally there to help you. Like that is literally his only purpose, is there to help you. Go ahead.
Which was not what I expected. I thought that he was. Did we say spoilers?
Oh yeah, full on spoilers for this.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, yeah.
I fully expected the janitor to be the big bad.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and it was a cool turnaround that at the end he's like, "Now let me help you."
Yeah,
because there's no like it's really there was no way to do it without him, and he knew that.
Yeah.
So he was really. It turns out the whole game he was waiting for you to be ready for his help.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. Another just game level design part that I loved the motel. That
yes.
You know, okay, you want to get across this chasm. Well, you can do that, but you have to travel extra dimensionally to this weird motel. and use that to traverse this chasm. You know, don't ask how it works; it just works. Figure it out.
Yeah, he's like in the like the instructional videos on how to navigate the light switch,
the lamps.
Yeah, the lamps. Like, and you know, making it so apparent for you. But even still, it's like, okay, well, as long as I can get, okay, you know, what do I have to do? And you know, ringing the bell and all, at the desk for the doors to open. I remember like the last time you go to the motel. You ring the bell like 2 or 3 times, then you go to like open the door, and there's like an extra dimensional like monster just like chilling in the doorway. I was like, that's not right. It almost reminded me of like, did you ever watch Courage the Cowardly Dog?
No.
Okay, well, there's this episode where he goes to this like really creepy motel, and he's like opening and closing all these different doors, and just all this weird stuff is happening, and it kind of reminded me of that. It was almost like a callback to that a little bit, like. You know, but yeah, I loved the motel. Like I loved the first time it happens, you know, and you can hear like people screaming like the last time you go, I think, too. One thing that
I think the last time there's like you can hear voices on the other side of some of the doors.
Yes.
But you can't get to them. And,
yes.
But then I remember the first time I, you know, pulled a switch and suddenly I'm there. It was the coolest moment. I just sat there like, whoa.
Yeah. And it freaked me out too. Like
yeah.
that kind of fits into the aesthetic. Just like the sound design in this game is second to none. Like I've never heard anything like it before, you know, just
the
how
sound
it fits.
Design. Yeah. They knew the right things to make subtly like dramatic. Even it's the tiniest thing, but even when you discover a new area and the name of it suddenly fills the
Boom.
entire screen
Yes.
in those huge block letters.
Yes.
There's something even ominous about that.
Yeah.
And
Very stylistic.
And that's part of the visual design. There was definitely some sound design in there that made that work. It's just beautifully done.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, unless you have anything else you want to say about the aesthetic, I think we can kind of move on a little bit.
No, we're good. My voice cracked like I'm 15.
That happens to me.
No, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. I'm a grown man.
I do like baseball. Yeah. So we talked about aesthetic, we talked about gameplay, aesthetic. Did you like Jessie? Did you buy her as did you like Jessie's journey? Did it feel authentic to you?
I think you're... Boy, I've never thought about whether I liked her or not. I think they do such a good job of putting you in her shoes that I never thought about whether I liked her as a character or not. I think she was mainly just doing what she had to do. And it was a great mix with her. The actress did a great job of, like, I think in her voice you could hear that she knows this is crazy, but that she's also determined to see it through, because she has her ultimate goals, and so I liked that about her. I think that helps you as the player to say the same thing. Like, this is nuts. I don't know half of what's happening in here, but I'm going to push through, and it's going to be worth it.
Well, and it's almost like, you could tell she's kind of questioning why she's even there, but she has to do what she continues to do. She has to keep going. And I think this could be a good time to maybe potentially, because I did like her, like I bought it. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And finding her brother should be like the root of what's happening, yet that felt like such a small part of the story by the end of it. That felt like such a minute thing. I was like, okay, whatever, I want to learn. I want to learn more about, and at the end of the game, you have like the director suit on, and like the world is yours for the taking. Obviously, we had the Foundation DLC and AWE, which is the final DLC. And yeah, there's just so much to it to where I totally buy her in that role, and I enjoyed her performance. I think it could be a good time now to potentially pivot to where how this kind of fits in, because obviously this whole journey started with Alan Wake, right? Mm-hmm. So what bits of lore did you find within the story, if you can remember, the main story, that kind of triggered like Alan Wake things for you?
Well, I wouldn't say there's specific like objects or piece of lore. It's mainly just like the concepts that very definitely jived with what you saw in Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Like the unreality felt very similar in ways. Like some of like the dread of some of the bad guys and stuff was very similar. The way that like the whole like perception is reality type thing was very much a theme in both of them. And both games played with that in different ways. But I liked that in that they both felt dreamlike in different ways.
Yeah, but like self-aware at the same time, like
because Alan Wake knew that this is seriously wrong.
Yeah, and even like whenever you find files and stuff in Control, you kind of seeing the same types of things happen. Whenever you'd find a page in Alan Wake, those are pages that he's written, and like you're literally playing out, the things that he has written. Like he is literally writing things into reality, because this this force uses creative people to create things. And
yeah, well, I'll tell you one of the I would say the best testaments to how well they did with that is that when I found out that Alan Wake was in the same universe, I thought immediately, yeah, that makes sense, because they portrayed both of them well enough. They set both of them up enough that there were enough common threads with the experience that once I heard that, I thought, okay, yeah, good job. I can totally buy that.
Well, and also yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like finding a bit like a file or a voice recording where Jessie's talking to her therapist. Like, why does the Bureau have tapes of Jessie's, therapy sessions? And she's talking about Thomas Zane, like reading books by Thomas Zane, which we know is a character, the writer basically from Alan Wake. And there's a lot of things that like kind of connect, but I mean, essentially what's implied by these two universes being connected, there is a really big chance that the Bureau, the idea that there's things wrong with what's happening, Jessie and her history and all the things that's happening in Control, is literally being written into existence by Alan Wake.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Like literally the fact that your main purpose, you don't know why you're here at this thing other than you got to find your brother, but finding the gun, like finding these things, like Alan knows he has to escape the cabin somehow. So the only way to do that is to create a hero's story and a hero that's competent enough and that is educated as to what is happening. And the only way that he could educate this person is by conveying whatever details he's constructed or has experienced, and being able to convey that not only by creating the Bureau and the Foundation, but creating all these things and being able to express it, which would make sense in this game. Why it's also unclear and unconcise is like he's literally transmitting these things interdimensionally and trying to give Jessie the tools that she needs to come save him, which is insane to me.
Yeah, and if you go with that theory, then she's living in a world while it's being constructed around her.
Yes, which would make sense.
Yeah, which would make sense with how everything feels. Like some things feel very, very unfinished, but some things feel hyper focused and developed. And yeah, I mean, it's a testament to the world in both of those games that's a plausible theory.
Yeah, well, and I think about it like, okay, this is a multifaceted thing. Like, you as an author and a writer, like, how many times have you gone through stuff where it's like, actually, I don't want to use that, right? Like, you might mark it out. That's kind of where it connects to me, is like these files, he's literally trying to give her everything that he can, and he's like, actually, that's not important. I'm leaving that out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, like, don't worry about that, Yeah,
and you end up having tons of half-formed ideas in the background of any world or character that you build.
Yes.
That in your mind form the the lattice work on top of which you actually build a reality everyone's going to see. But there's a lot of scaffolding underneath that no one's ever going to see, and it's unfinished and it's not pretty, but it all does still hold up, what you end up constructing. So yeah, if you're a character that could see both sides, the reality and like the structure behind the reality, that could be very powerful.
Well, and also I think too, like, Alan has been in this battle with the Hiss, that he's named it. Like, if you run with that theory, if that thing, and obviously I have not finished AWE, this is all just conjecture at this point.
Mm-hmm. I haven't finished it either.
Yeah, so I mean,
I'm sure we'll talk after we.
Oh, we will. We'll cover the Foundation and AWE, to kind of like swap notes and kind of see what we think. But if you run with that theory, if he's actively trying to fight the Hiss or fight the darkness or fight the whatever, it would make sense that as he's trying to transmit this information to her, it's kind of getting lost in translation a little bit based off of how strong that presence is and what it is capable of doing, which would make sense. Like if you try and go into a room that may have exactly what you need in the motel, and it's like, no, like, the Hiss was able to get in front of you in that moment. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you can't come in here. Like, we see what's going on. We're actively trying to stop it. And, we had talked a little bit about why she was there. She kind of, did you hear that? That was kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's
the
fine.
Hiss.
Yeah, the Hiss.
They've come for you.
She's coming. Yeah, they're gonna, the upside down phantom dudes are gonna come in here and ruin my setup in here. A big part of finding her brother is also getting in touch with Polaris. Like, Polaris is trying to draw her, into that like satellite looking thing type thing, and the Hiss is actively trying to cut that cord, so to speak, and kind of eliminate that, because evidently whatever Polaris is, whether it's Alan trying to communicate with her or whether it's, whatever it is trying to guide her, ultimately the Hiss is trying to eliminate that because they see her as a threat. And go ahead.
That's interesting. I want to, it makes me want to read more about the ending, because I I felt like that was saying something different at the end. But I could have totally misunderstood it.
What was your interpretation?
I thought she ended up realizing that Polaris was herself, was like her id. And like the part of herself that was, I thought it was just it was an extension of her own will. But again, I could be wrong. That's just kind of how I interpreted it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it very well could be that, you know, like, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I find it interesting, you know, after Polaris is kind of taken down, right, and you find yourself in another dreamlike sequence, and you're kind of coming to realize, like, that happened, yeah, like, you're kind of coming to realize everything that happened, because the credits roll, and, like, they kind of get scribbled at the end, and, yeah, that would make sense, and that's another thing, too, is the ending, it just all happens, like, so fast, like it just kind of goes, and you're just kind of left with like, what did I just do? You know, I have so many,
Yeah, exactly.
I have so many questions, you know, and I like buying into this idea that Alan has maybe not quite constructed the end to the story of how these two, you know, how she finds him and comes to save him. And I like that it's maybe kind of messy and muddled, but now that he's willed her into existence and that she's manifested, she's actually going through her own problems and is like kind of self-aware in a way, you know, and it's like, okay, now it's completely out of Alan's control type thing.
And you could be right, because I mean, the name Polaris is probably telling. Polaris is the North Star.
Oh yeah,
which
right,
yeah, which people often, you know, seafarers often use as their ultimate guide.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a signal that it's some other intelligence that's trying to lead her in the right direction.
Right, like almost like the one beacon of light inside this dark world, you know, of the hiss, and like, you know, it just there is nothing about this game that is surface level.
Yeah.
Like,
obviously, as you can tell, if you're listening and you haven't played it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if you haven't played it, I would say it is worth the play. I wouldn't call this a fun game. Like, it's a cool...
It's an experience.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
It's an immersive experience. There are times that, I mean, there's the type of fun that is like, I'm on a roller coaster. I'm going to throw my hands up.
Yeah.
And then there's the type of fun that's like, ooh, I just watched or read something really mind-bendy that really challenged me. And would I call it fun? No, but I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. And this goes into a bigger discussion even about video games. And it's like, do games inherently have to be fun to be enjoyable? I didn't have fun playing this game. There were parts that I found amusing, like, you know, like the infinite maze and stuff like that. But for the most part, this game felt like work in a lot of ways to me. You know,
I think it's just like anything. You have to, whatever you're creating you have to commit to what it is.
Totally.
And you know, in specificity like that, you're going to end up finding the people who really engage with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think there is a sense of I've never experienced anything like this in a video game before, ever.
No.
It's a one-of-a-kind experience. Trying to compare it directly, like side by side, to Alan Wake, there are implications within Alan Wake that there's something bigger going on, and there's a lot of like mind-bendy stuff there, but the gameplay, I mean, it's a linear experience.
Very little, and the whole vibe of the gameplay is very different.
Yeah, it's completely different.
It plays more like survival horror.
Totally.
Or like a I'm blanking on the name. What's the other survival horror game that people love? The sci-fi one.
Resident Evil?
No. You're underwater.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Like BioShock?
It reminds me of BioShock, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of, yeah. And also in a completely different way, but it's, to me, Alan Wake is way scarier than Control.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Control's
Alan
creepy.
Wake, to me, Alan Wake was exhausting to play. As great a game as it is,
it's very stressful.
Play it again.
It's very stressful.
But Control is very much a slow burn.
Yes, it is. And it's one of those games, like, if you're looking for something different and you have like a week to devote to a game, Because I think, I mean, I probably played this game for 30 hours cumulatively. It's a good game. Like, it is a good game, but it is a lot of work, just navigating the map and navigating. And once you finally get to that end point, you're like, oh man, like it's almost like playing a Kojima game. Like, it kind of reminded me of playing Metal Gear Solid a little bit. It was like, wow, that was amazing, but I don't want to play that game again for like a long time, because there's just a lot to take in and a lot to pay attention to. There's some
it's
games
not casual.
No,
it's emotionally
not
taxing.
It is very, that's a good way of putting it. It is taxing. So, but yeah, I think that's all we're gonna talk about, I think, for this first Control session a little bit, unless there's anything else that you want to mention.
No, I think we covered the basics. I'll look forward to like coming back when we finish the DLCs and seeing what we think.
Yeah, in another 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
No. I did start the DLC for Alan Wake, but it immediately just made me want to play Alan Wake. So now that we have this recorded, I'll be able to play Alan Wake and then go through the Alan Wake DLC and then have more to talk about, as well as the Foundation DLC. So lot to cover. So for Control though, the base game, if you had to put a score on it,
I give it an 8. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's exactly what I would give it too. I was looking up what the quote unquote professionals say about this game. Control meta. Yeah, so I mean, Metacritic gives it an 82. The meta score is 82. The user score is 7.2. I think a lot of people are going to play this game and misinterpret it. And
you just have to know whether it's the type of game for you or not.
Yeah.
I would imagine some of the low scores are people who went in and it's just not for them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that
Well,
if it's not for you.
There may be a lot of people that was like, okay, it's the same people who made Alan Wake, right? And they made Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which is a good game, like, but it's not really like, it's not the same as Alan Wake. It's more arcadey. And whenever you think about that, it's like, oh man, I wonder if this game's going to be like Alan Wake, and it is not at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is not like that. So part of me wonders how many people went into this game thinking it was going to be like that, and then were disappointed that it wasn't. This is a one-of-a-kind experience, but it's definitely not perfect. It definitely has flaws. It is fun in some parts, but it is very taxing, and it requires a lot of mental power.
Well, it's the same experience as watching as like a Twilight Zone marathon.
Totally.
I would never they're not fun. I mean, are those fun? No. But man, are they cool to watch?
Yeah.
If you're in the mood for it.
If you're in the mood for it. That's a great way of putting it. So, but yeah, I agree with you. 8 out of 10 for me. As it stands, I like the idea that this could be a side chain to the Alan Wake series, and that this could play into a bigger picture, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting more out of this world. As it stands right now, I think I personally prefer Alan Wake more, just because I like the constant narration, and I vibe with that world more. I'm a dark soul, you know what I mean? But I respect this game for its ambition, and I could see this being some people's favorite games of all time, like easily, just based off of how much stuff there is to do. We didn't even touch on side quests at all. There are so many side things to do in this game, and like things to find and stuff to do, like
things to discover. Like there's one of my favorite side things is the that fiery like the incinerator.
Clean up the trash or whatever, right?
Yeah, was one of my favorite side things, because that they managed to make that incinerator feel so ominous and like a predator, even though it never moves. They made that thing feel like this scary, hungry beast.
Yeah.
And I just loved the whole mood of being in that room.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I was like, this is a furnace room, like, again, just kind of like, what is it, hyperbole, is that right? Like just over exaggeration, right? Mm-hmm. Of things that seem common, or that seem like, it's like, oh, an incinerator room, okay. Yeah, it's an entire wall that's literally a furnace, and then after you're done with the trash, it's like a white infinite nothingness, and it's like, what is happening here? What is going on? You know,
And the whole time you're feeding it, it's like it feels like it's hungry.
Yeah, it's like, hello, Kevin. Remember that from Home Alone? He's afraid of the basement. The basement. What do you call it? It's not an incinerator, but it's like
The furnace.
the furnace. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is kind of like that, just like times 1,000. But yeah, it's similar.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, I enjoyed my time with this game. I definitely recommend it to play in the same vein that I recommend like a Kojima game. Like I would recommend like Death Stranding, you know, for the sense like, dude, you have to experience this because is Death Stranding fun? Not really, but it's super satisfying. And I think the more you dig into this game's world, the more satisfied you are with the world. And it's like, oh my God. Like that is freaking insane. And
play it at night.
Play it at night, play it with headphones, and have a ball. So
yeah,
totally
agree.
Ryan, we freaking did it.
We did it
finally. Holy
2.5
crap,
years later,
dude.
We'll high five our past selves.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go back to Gabe and be like, Gabe, first of all, don't start 6 podcasts all at once.
Well, and me, I was trying to get books written and deals done and everything. And so
yeah. But no, we'll definitely look forward to seeing you back on Keeping It Real.
Totally.
Obviously, I'm trying not to say anything too topical, you know, because I'm sure this will drop in a few weeks or whatever. But it's been a pleasure. I'm glad we finally made this happen. I'm looking forward to hopefully we can get those DLCs finished and talk about this world a little bit more in a final episode for this series. So
I'm down for it.
Sounds good, man. So why don't you plug your stuff? I don't think that ever gets old. I think that's evergreen. So plug your stuff and let us know where we can find you.
Sure. Twitter at @RyanDalton. Ryan Dalton on Instagram. This Last Adventure is my next book. Comes out February 1st. And it is open for pre-order now wherever fine books are sold. Wherever you like to get your books, get on there and pre-order it.
I pre-ordered my copy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. I'm looking forward to it. And you know what? I'm actually going to read it. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Hey, no. you know what? Even if you don't want to read it anyway, just pre-order it. It makes a great paperweight, a great doorstop.
Well, I don't know many people that get to do something creative that they genuinely love for a living. And you're one of the first people that I met that got to do that. You and another acquaintance, I met you guys at the same time, and she was making YouTube content for a living, and you were writing books for a living, and I was like, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I can do what I love doing for a living. And I can proudly say now, I am officially a executive producer at a studio, doing what I love for a living. And, for all the flubs that I have in my personal content, we find this marriage of, and I'm sure it's different for you as an author, but there is always going to be this marriage of like hobby and like professionalism and work, to where you kind of might meet in the middle. You get over your flubs, like you just keep pressing on. And I would hate for someone to like listen to a show that I've messed up on or something and be like, that guy's a professional. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you're seeing this is all passion projects. Like you can't take this part of it too seriously because, I don't expect perfection. I expect it to be relatable and be enjoyable. And, I expect, I think you can kind of relate to that. Like you want it to still feel fun for stuff that you're doing. And hopefully one day, I'll be creating my own content for a living and still making the same mistakes that I make now, but it'll be mine on my time and on my dime type thing. So I have to say I'm truly honored that you're my friend, and I'm truly honored that you're able to come onto the show and do this every once in a while, because it's just a blast. Like I love podcasting with you. So.
Oh man, I appreciate that, and I love this as well. And I mean, podcasting in general is super fun to me, and I love being on your shows. I think they're super well produced. And yeah, it's great to be just around people who love doing what they're doing and
Yeah.
are always trying to get better at it, and that's inspiring.
Passion is infectious. Like when someone's passionate about something, you cannot fake that. I'm sorry. Like you go watch a movie. We're talking about Eternals off cam, off mic tonight. Like we're talking about like chemistry between characters and stuff like that. Like you can't fake that. Like if you have chemistry with someone, you have it. Like it is what it is. Like people can pick up on unauthenticity like immediately, and that's something that I'm super happy that you and I have a good flow, because I really enjoy it. So I'm glad that you enjoy it, and that it's I hope the feelings are reciprocated. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, hey, I keep coming back, so that's
a good sign. That is a good sign.
Yeah, that lets you know.
Yeah. So, Ryan, thank you so much for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. If you stuck around this long, we really, really appreciate it. Make sure you peep all of our different projects down below. We got a lot of different things going on at all times. And yeah, just all you can really ask for is for people to continue listening, and that means the world. You might not think that the numbers, whenever we get good numbers on a show, that it's like, oh, well, whatever, like, people are going to listen to it. It's fine. Like, no. Every single time I see that number go up on the overall listens and downloads, it's just that step, that extra step of validation, right? That what you're doing actually freaking means something. So I've always said, if one person consumes what I'm doing, then I've done something worthwhile, So just thank you if you've stuck around for this long, and thank you if you continue to show up. We really appreciate it. So definitely tune into us talking about other stuff over on those other shows. And Ryan, until next time, say goodbye.
Bye.
Well, once again, thank you so much for showing up today. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I know that's the thing that all the YouTubers do. Everyone's asking to sub. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and who knows, you might even see a video every now and then that you actually like or may be interested in. Not only that, I do a bunch of stuff, so make sure you check all the information down in the description down below. We got podcasts, we got Let's Plays, we got all kinds of stuff for all kinds of fandoms. So make sure you check that out. I would seriously, seriously appreciate it, and I would love to see you around here more. I am Gabriel Fast. I will always be the Wannabe Critic.